The warning lights flashed red across every screen in the Galactic Council space station. Ambassador Lyra Ven stood frozen in the command center, her long fingers gripping the edge of the console as she watched her homeworld burn. The peaceful planet of Valora Prime, home to billions of her people, was under attack by ships that should not exist. "How many vessels?" Admiral Thex Vorin demanded, his scaled hands moving across the tactical display. The Thoraxian warrior had commanded the Council fleet for 20 years, but nothing in his experience prepared him for this moment. "We count over 300 warships, Admiral," a young officer reported, his voice shaking. "They identify themselves as the Krethic Dominion. Their technology is far beyond our defensive capabilities." Lyra Ven watched the display with growing horror. The Krethic fleet surrounded her homeworld like predators circling wounded prey. Massive battleships fired bright beams of energy that struck the planetary shields with tremendous force. Each impact sent shockwaves through the protective barrier that kept her people safe from orbital bombardment. "The Krethic are supposed to be a myth," another council member whispered. "Stories to frighten children." "They are very real," Admiral Thex Vorin said grimly. He turned to his communications officer. "Send immediate word to all Council military stations. Deploy every available ship to Valora Prime, and send evacuation ships for the civilians." The orders went out across the galaxy, but Lyra Ven knew the truth that others refused to see. The Council fleet was designed for peacekeeping operations and border patrols. They stopped pirates and smugglers, not armies of conquest. The Council had enjoyed 400 years of relative peace, and that peace had made them weak. On the main screen, the first wave of Council defensive ships arrived at Valora Prime. 25 cruisers and frigates, their sleek silver hulls reflecting the light of the Valoran sun. They moved into formation between the Krethic fleet and the planet, and Lyra Ven felt a brief moment of hope. That hope died within minutes. The Krethic warships opened fire with weapons that cut through Council shields like they were made of paper. The first Council cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light, then another, then 3 more in quick succession. The defenders scattered, trying to evade the overwhelming firepower, but the Krethic ships pursued them with cold efficiency. "Admiral, we are receiving casualty reports," the communications officer said, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 ships destroyed, 11 more heavily damaged. The survivors are requesting permission to withdraw. Admiral Thex Vorin closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Lyra Ven saw something she had never seen in the proud warrior's face before. Fear. "Tell them to fall back to defensive positions," he said quietly. "We cannot win this battle." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. More Council ships arrived over the next few hours, but the result was always the same. The Krethic possessed superior weapons, stronger shields, and a ruthless determination to destroy anything that opposed them. By the end of the first day, the Council had lost 43 warships. The Krethic had lost none. On Valora Prime, the planetary shields began to fail. Lyra Ven watched through satellite feeds as the first Krethic weapons struck the surface. Cities that had stood for thousands of years vanished in explosions of fire and debris. Her people, gentle herbivores who had never known war, ran for shelter as their world burned around them. "We have an incoming transmission from the Krethic command ship," the communications officer announced. A face appeared on the main screen that made even Admiral Thex Vorin take a step backward. The Krethic commander had dark metallic skin covered in ridges and scars. His eyes were the color of blood, and when he smiled, he revealed rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "I am Supreme Commander Krax of the Krethic Dominion," the figure announced. His voice was deep and full of contempt. "You will surrender Valora Prime immediately and acknowledge Krethic authority over this system. If you refuse, we will eliminate every living creature on the planet and take the world anyway. You have 6 hours to decide. The screen went dark before anyone could respond. Silence filled the command center for several long seconds. We must negotiate, one council member said desperately. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. There is no compromise with creatures like that, Admiral Thex Vorin replied. The Krethic do not negotiate. They conquer or they destroy. Lyraven felt tears running down her face as she watched another Krethic bombardment strike her homeworld. The shields were at 15% strength and falling fast. Once they collapsed completely, nothing would stop the invaders from killing everyone on the surface. There must be something we can do, she said, her voice breaking. Someone who can help us. Anyone. Admiral Thex Voran looked at her with sad eyes. The Council military is already here, Ambassador. We have committed everything we have, and it is not enough. There are no reinforcements coming. But Lyraven was not thinking about the Council military anymore. She was thinking about the species that the Council had kept at arm's length for 15 years. The species that other races whispered about in fear. The ones they called Deathworlders. What about the humans? She asked quietly. Every head in the command center turned to look at her. Several council members made sounds of alarm. The humans? One official said in disbelief. You cannot be serious. They are dangerous, violent. They come from a world so harsh that it should not support intelligent life. They are also warriors, Lyraven said, her voice growing stronger. Real warriors, not peacekeepers playing at military service. Earth fought wars that killed millions of their own people. They understand violence in ways we never wanted to learn. Admiral Thex Vorin studied her carefully. You want me to send a distress signal to humanity? The Council has avoided close contact with them since they joined our organization. We have no idea how they will respond. They might not respond at all, Lyraven admitted. But right now, they are the only hope my people have. The Krethic are going to kill everyone on Valora Prime. If the humans ignore our call for help, we are no worse off than we are now. But if they answer... She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Everyone in the command center understood what she was saying. If the humans answered, they might save Valora Prime, or they might be just as dangerous as the Krethic themselves. It was a terrible gamble, but it was the only one they had left. Admiral Thex Vorin was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Prepare a distress signal, he ordered. Transmit it to human space on all frequencies. Tell them that Valora Prime is under attack by a superior military force. Tell them that millions of innocent civilians face extinction. Tell them that the Galactic Council has failed to protect them. The communications officer worked quickly, her hands flying across the controls. Within minutes, the message was ready. Signal prepared, Admiral. Awaiting your authorization to transmit. Thex Vorin looked at the tactical display one more time. The Krethic fleet was Mimn. The alert klaxon woke Admiral Kyle Hammond from a deep sleep. He was on his feet and reaching for his uniform before his mind fully registered what was happening. After 30 years in the United Earth Defense Force, some responses were pure instinct. Admiral Hammond, please report to Command Center immediately, the voice over the intercom said. Priority 1 situation. Kyle pulled on his boots and ran through the corridors of the New Terra military station. Other officers and crew members rushed past him, all heading to their duty stations. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to wake the entire Third Fleet. The command center was already full of people when he arrived. Captain Lisa Martinez stood at the main tactical display, her dark eyes scanning streams of data that scrolled across multiple screens. Commander Daniel Cross was at the communications station, his face grim as he listened to something through his headset. Report, Kyle said as he took his position at the center of the room. Admiral, we received a distress signal from the Galactic Council 20 minutes ago, Lisa said. She brought up the message on the main screen. The Valoran homeworld is under attack by something called the Krethic Dominion. The Council fleet tried to defend them and failed. They are asking for help. Kyle read the message carefully. The Valoran were a peaceful species known for their art and philosophy. They had no military to speak of, relying on the Council's protection for security. If the Council fleet had failed to defend them, the situation was desperate. "What do we know about the Krethic?" he asked. Daniel looked up from his station. "Not much, sir. Our intelligence files show them as a rumored threat from beyond the galactic rim. Apparently, they are not a rumor anymore. Based on the tactical data the Council sent with the distress signal, the Krethic have technology roughly equal to ours but with heavier firepower. How long until they break through the Valoran planetary defenses?" "Less than 48 hours, sir. Maybe less. The shields are already failing." Kyle studied the tactical display, his mind running through options and scenarios. The Galactic Council had kept humanity at a distance for 15 years, ever since Earth joined the galactic community. Other species were afraid of humans, calling them Deathworlders because Earth was so dangerous compared to most inhabited worlds. The Council accepted human membership but never really welcomed humanity into their organization. Now they needed help that only humans could provide. "How long to reach Valora Prime at maximum speed?" Kyle asked. 72 hours, sir," Lisa replied. "But Admiral, we have not received authorization from Earth Command to deploy. This would be the first time human military forces engage in a galactic conflict." Kyle nodded slowly. She was right. This decision would have consequences far beyond one battle. But he also knew that while he waited for authorization from Earth, millions of Valoran civilians would die. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment," he ordered. "All ships, combat readiness within the hour. And send a message back to the Council." "What should the message say, sir?" Daniel asked. "Tell them that the United Earth Defense Force 3rd Fleet is deploying to Valora Prime immediately. Tell them we will arrive in 72 hours and will engage any hostile forces threatening the Valoran people. Tell them that humanity accepts their request for help with no conditions and expects nothing in return." The command center went quiet for a moment. Then officers began moving to carry out his orders, their voices calling out status reports and deployment instructions. Kyle watched the organized chaos with satisfaction. Whatever else other species thought about humans, no one could question their efficiency. Within 30 minutes, every ship in the 3rd Fleet was preparing for departure. The carrier Relentless, Lisa's command, began launching fighter squadrons for pre-flight checks. The battleship Vengeance, where Daniel served as tactical officer, ran weapons diagnostics that lit up its hull with brief flashes of light. Dozens of other warships, from heavy cruisers to fast destroyers, powered up their engines and charged their weapons systems. Kyle stood on the bridge of his flagship, the battleship Defiance, and watched the fleet assemble. Human warships were nothing like the elegant council vessels he had seen in diplomatic meetings. Human ships were built for war, not beauty. They had thick armor plating that could withstand tremendous damage. They carried enough weapons to destroy small moons. Their designs included redundant systems for every critical function because human engineers assumed that things would break in battle and planned accordingly. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, Admiral," the navigation officer reported. "Take us to Valora Prime," Kyle ordered. "Maximum speed." The stars stretched into lines of light as the 3rd Fleet jumped into hyperspace. Inside the Defiance, Kyle gathered his senior officers for a mission briefing. "Our objective is simple," he told them. "We will arrive at Valora Prime, assess the situation, and eliminate any threat to the Valoran civilian population. Rules of engagement are as follows. First, we offer the Krethic one chance to withdraw peacefully. If they refuse, we remove them by force. Second, protection of civilians is our top priority at all times. Third, we accept surrender from enemy forces who lay down their weapons. Fourth, We do not target civilian infrastructure unless absolutely necessary for military objectives. What if the Krethic refuse to surrender and keep fighting? One officer asked. Kyle's expression turned cold. Then we destroy every one of their warships and drive them out of the system. The Valoran asked for our help. We will not let them down. During the 3-day journey to Valora Prime, the fleet maintained constant combat readiness drills. Kyle wanted his people sharp and ready for anything. He also wanted them to remember why they were going into battle. On the carrier Relentless, Captain Lisa Martinez addressed her fighter pilots in the launch bay. Young men and women in flight suits stood at attention, their faces serious as they listened. "We are going to protect people who cannot protect themselves," Lisa told them. "The Valoran have never known war. They are artists and philosophers, not warriors. Right now they are dying because someone decided to take their world by force. That is wrong, and we are going to make it right. When we arrive, I expect every one of you to fly with precision and discipline. We are not going there for glory or revenge. We are going there to save lives." Lieutenant Maya Foster, one of the youngest pilots in the squadron, raised her hand. "Captain, what if the Krethic are stronger than we think? What if we can't win?" Lisa looked at her steadily. "Then we fight anyway, Lieutenant, because if we don't, the Valoran will have no one else. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. That is what it means to be human." On the battleship Vengeance, Commander Daniel Cross ran tactical simulations with his weapons crews. He studied the Krethic ship designs and looked for weaknesses in their formation patterns. Their shields seemed strong, but they focused defensive power on their forward sections, he told his team. They expect enemies to retreat, not press the attack. We are going to hit them from multiple angles and overwhelm their ability to adapt. "Sir, our intelligence suggests the Krethic have conquered 12 other star systems," a young ensign said nervously. "They must be good at what they do." Daniel nodded. "They are good at fighting opponents who are afraid of them. But we are not going to be afraid. We are going to show them what happens when you pick a fight with humans who have something worth fighting for." Throughout the fleet, similar conversations took place. Human military forces prepared for battle with a mixture of professional focus and genuine anger at what the Krethic were doing to the Valoran. Unlike many species that fought for territory or resources, humans could fight for ideals. The concept of protecting innocent people from harm was deeply ingrained in human military culture. On the final day before arrival, Kyle broadcast a message to the entire fleet. "In a few hours, we will drop out of hyperspace at Valora Prime," he said. "We will be the first human military force to engage in combat with another galactic power. What we do there will be remembered. How we conduct ourselves will shape how other species see humanity for generations to come. I want you to remember that we are not there as conquerors. We are there as protectors. We will offer peace to the Krethic. But if they choose war, we will show them that humans are very, very good at war. Fight with honor, fight with discipline, and fight to win, because millions of lives are counting on us." The Third Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Valora system right on schedule. Sensors immediately began feeding data to every ship in the formation. "Admiral, we are detecting massive Krethic fleet presence around Valora Prime," the sensor officer reported. "Over 200 warships. They are maintaining orbital bombardment of the planet. We also detect scattered council ships, heavily damaged and retreating." Kyle looked at the tactical display and felt his jaw tighten. The Krethic had surrounded the Valoran homeworld like a swarm of insects. Even from this distance, he could see explosions on the planet's surface where the shields had finally failed. Supreme Commander Krax stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the approaching human vessels with mild interest. His officers had reported the arrival of an unknown fleet at the edge of the system, but he felt no concern. In his long career of conquest, Krax had destroyed hundreds of enemy fleets. These newcomers would be no different. "What species are they?" he asked his sensor officer. They identify themselves as human, Commander, from a world called Earth. They are members of the Galactic Council. Krax laughed, a harsh sound that made his crew flinch. More Council weaklings coming to die. How many ships? 47 warships, Commander. Their designs are unusual. Heavy armor and weapons, but they lack the elegant efficiency of proper military vessels. Primitive, Krax said dismissively. Send a squadron to intercept them and destroy them quickly. I want to return my attention to the planet. The Valorans still have some resistance that needs to be crushed. But before his orders could be carried out, the human fleet sent a transmission on all frequencies. Krax gestured for his communications officer to put it on the main screen. A human appeared, wearing a dark blue uniform with silver insignia. His face was weathered, his eyes the color of ice. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried an edge that made even Krax pay attention. I am Admiral Kyle Hammond of the United Earth Defense Force. This message is directed to the hostile fleet currently attacking Valora Prime. You will cease all military operations immediately. You will withdraw all forces from the planet's surface and orbital space. You will leave this star system within 72 hours. If you comply with these demands, no harm will come to you. If you refuse, we will remove you by force. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge of the Krethic flagship for several seconds. Then Krax began to laugh again, louder this time. They dare to threaten us? Us? He activated his own communication system. Human Admiral, you have made a grave mistake. The Krethic Dominion has conquered 12 star systems. We have destroyed fleets 10 times the size of yours. Leave now, or you will share the Valoran fate. To prove his point, Krax ordered a demonstration. His orbital weapons fired on a Valoran city that was still resisting occupation. The beams of energy struck buildings that were thousands of years old, reducing them to rubble in seconds. Krax made sure the humans could see the destruction on their sensors. That is the price of defying the Krethic, he said coldly. Withdraw now, or we will do the same to your ships and your worlds. Kyle Hammond watched the city burn and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had hoped the Krethic would accept the offer to leave peacefully. Now he knew they would not. Admiral? Lisa Martinez said quietly from her position on the Relentless. What are your orders? Kyle checked the time. The deadline was set for 72 hours, but he knew they could not wait that long. Every hour they delayed meant more Valoran would die. He made his decision. The deadline is now, he said. All ships, weapons free. Destroy the Krethic fleet. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Protect the planet at all costs. The Third Fleet moved forward with a speed that surprised the Krethic forces. Human ships accelerated at rates that would kill most species due to the intense gravity forces involved. But humans came from a high-gravity world where such forces were normal. The crews barely noticed the pressure. Launch all fighters, Lisa commanded from the Relentless. Target those orbital bombardment platforms. I want them gone before they can fire again. Lieutenant Maya Foster sat in the cockpit of her fighter as the launch catapult threw her into space at tremendous speed. Around her, dozens of other fighters formed up into tight squadrons. The cockpit displays showed the Krethic bombardment platforms as red targets hanging above Valora Prime. Gold Squadron, this is Gold Leader, Maya said into her radio. Stay tight on my wing. We are going straight through their defensive fire. Do not hesitate. Do not break formation. These platforms are killing civilians, and we are going to stop them. The human fighters dove toward the platforms at maximum speed. Krethic defensive weapons opened fire, filling space with energy beams and explosive projectiles. The Council fleet had learned to avoid such firepower, retreating in the face of superior weapons. The human pilots flew straight into it. Maya's fighter shook as near misses exploded around her. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, making tiny adjustments to dodge the incoming fire. Her training on Earth had prepared her for this. Earth's atmosphere was thick and turbulent, making flying difficult. By comparison, space combat felt almost easy. "Missiles away!" she called out, launching her payload at the nearest platform. All around her, other fighters did the same. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the Krethik bombardment platforms. The platforms tried to shoot down the incoming missiles, but there were too many coming from too many angles. Human tactics relied on overwhelming the enemy's ability to respond. The first platform exploded in a brilliant flash, then another, then 4 more in quick succession. "Gold leader to relentless, target platforms destroyed," Maya reported, moving to secondary targets. On the battleship Vengeance, Commander Daniel Cross watched the fighter attack succeed and smiled with fierce satisfaction. Now it was time for the heavy ships to do their work. "All batteries, target the Krethik cruisers on the left flank," he ordered. "Fire when ready." The Vengeance's rail guns fired with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the entire ship. Solid metal projectiles, each one weighing several tons, launched at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy they carried was enormous. The projectiles hit the Krethik shields with devastating force. The shields flared bright and then collapsed under the impact. Moments later, the projectiles tore through the Krethik hull armor like it was paper. The enemy cruiser broke apart, its structure unable to withstand the damage. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer reported. "Acquiring next target." "Fire at will," Daniel said. "Keep firing until there are no targets left." The human battleships and cruisers unleashed a storm of firepower that shocked the Krethik fleet. Every human ship carried enough weapons to fight multiple opponents simultaneously. Their missile systems launched hundreds of smart munitions that weaved through space, avoiding defensive fire and striking vulnerable spots on enemy hulls. Their energy weapons, though shorter ranged than Krethik designs, hit with tremendous power. Supreme Commander Krax watched his tactical display with growing disbelief as his ships began to die. The humans were not fighting like the Council forces that fled from superior firepower. They were not fighting like the species he had conquered, who surrendered when faced with certain defeat. The humans fought with an aggression and skill level he had never encountered. "They are targeting our command ships," his tactical officer reported in alarm. "They have identified our fleet structure and are systematically destroying our leadership vessels." "All ships, concentrate fire on the human flagship," Krax ordered. "If we kill their admiral, they will lose coordination." A dozen Krethik warships turned their weapons toward Kyle Hammond's battleship, the Defiance. Energy beams and missiles converged on the human vessel from multiple directions. The Defiance's shields flared bright under the assault, absorbing damage that would have destroyed a Council ship instantly. "Shield strength at 60%, the defense officer reported calmly. "Hull integrity holding." "Return fire," Kyle ordered. "Show them what happens when they focus on us." The Defiance fired every weapon it had. Railgun projectiles, missiles, energy beams, and kinetic kill vehicles all launched simultaneously. The broadside was so powerful that 3 Krethik ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by the concentrated firepower. The others broke formation and scattered, trying to escape the devastating response. "Admiral, multiple enemy ships are attempting to flee the system," the sensor officer reported. "Let them go," Kyle said. "Our priority is protecting the planet. Focus all fire on any ship still attacking Valoran targets." The battle raged for hours. Human ships took damage, their armor scarred by enemy fire, but they continued fighting. Several human vessels had casualties, their medical bays filled with wounded crew members. But the human fleet maintained discipline and continued to execute their mission with ruthless efficiency. On Valora Prime, Ambassador Lyra Venn watched the space battle through the station's sensors. She could barely believe what she was seeing. The Krethic fleet that had seemed invincible was being destroyed by the human warships. The Council forces that had fled in disorder now regrouped, inspired by the human example to rejoin the fight. Admiral Thex Voren contacted Kyle directly. "Human Admiral, this is incredible. Your forces fight with a ferocity I have never witnessed. How can you sustain such aggressive tactics?" Kyle glanced at his tactical display before responding. "We fight this way because we have to, Admiral. We are protecting people who cannot protect themselves. That gives us purpose. That gives us strength. And we will not stop until every Valoran is safe." As the first day of battle ended, the Krethic fleet was in chaos. Over 90 ships destroyed, dozens more heavily damaged and fleeing. The human fleet had suffered damage to several vessels but lost none. Their casualties were in the hundreds, not the thousands. And most importantly, no more Krethic weapons were firing on Valora Prime. Supreme Commander Krax stared at his tactical display in shock. His fleet, which had conquered 12 star systems, was being defeated by a species he had dismissed as primitive. The humans absorbed damage that would cripple other species, and kept fighting. They used tactics that put tremendous stress on their crews, maneuvers that would kill most species due to the gravity forces involved. And they fought with a determination that suggested they would rather die than let the Valoran be harmed. "Commander, we are receiving reports from our ground forces." His communication of the drop pods fell through Valora Prime's atmosphere like meteors, their heat shields glowing bright orange. Inside each pod, human Marines sat in crash harnesses, checking their weapons and equipment one final time. Sergeant Jake Morrison watched the altitude display count down and felt the familiar mixture of fear and focus that came before combat. 30 seconds to impact," the pod's computer announced. "Prepare for insertion." Jake activated his squad's communication channel. "Listen up, people. We are landing in the middle of a hostile occupation zone. Our mission is to locate Valoran civilians and evacuate them to safety. Rules of engagement are clear. We protect the innocent. We accept surrender. And we do not, under any circumstances, harm civilians. Is that understood?" "Yes, Sergeant," his squad responded in unison. The drop pod hit the ground with tremendous force, its shock absorbers barely cushioning the impact. The side panels exploded outward, and Jake led his squad into the ruined streets of what had once been a beautiful Valoran city. Buildings lay in rubble all around them. Fires burned in dozens of locations, and in the distance they could hear the sounds of weapons fire. "Corporal Amy Chen, take point," Jake ordered. "Find me those civilians." Amy activated her helmet's sensor package and began scanning the area. Human-powered armor made each Marine look like a walking tank, standing over 2 meters tall and bristling with weapons. The armor allowed them to carry heavy equipment and protected them from most small arms fire. "I am picking up life signs in that building," Amy said, pointing to a partially collapsed structure 3 blocks away. "Multiple signatures, could be civilians." "Move out," Jake said. "Stay alert. Krethic forces are still in the area." They moved through the streets quickly, their armor's servo motors making soft, whirring sounds. As they approached the building, a group of Krethic soldiers emerged from cover and opened fire. Energy beams struck Jake's armor, scorching the surface, but not penetrating. "Contact enemy forces," he called out. "Return fire, but watch for civilians." The human Marines responded with disciplined volleys from their rifles. The Krethic soldiers were tough and well-trained, but they had never faced opponents like this. Human weapons fired projectiles that tore through Krethic armor with brutal efficiency. Within seconds, the enemy squad was eliminated. Jake approached the building carefully. "Hello?" he called out in the Valoran language. "We are human military forces. We are here to help you. Please respond if you can hear me." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then a voice, weak and frightened, responded from inside the building. Please do not hurt us. We have children here. Amy stepped forward and removed her helmet, revealing her face. It was a gesture meant to show they were not robots or monsters. We are not going to hurt you, she said gently. We are here to protect you. Can you tell me how many people are in there? Over 200, the voice replied. We have been hiding for 3 days. The Krethic soldiers said they would kill us if we tried to leave. Jake activated his communication link to Captain Martinez on the Relentless. Captain, we have located a large group of civilians, requesting immediate evacuation transport to our position. Transport is already on the way, Sergeant, Lisa replied. ETA 10 minutes. Hold that position and keep those people safe. The Marines formed a defensive perimeter around the building while the Valorans slowly emerged from their hiding place. They were tall, slender beings with pale skin and large eyes. Many of them were injured. Some carried small children who looked at the human soldiers with a mixture of fear and curiosity. An older Valoran approached Amy carefully. You are human? The Deathworlders? Amy nodded. Yes, we are human. But we are not here to hurt you. We heard your people's call for help. The Valoran's eyes filled with tears. I thought we would all die here. The Council could not stop the Krethic. We thought no one could stop them. We are going to stop them, Amy said firmly. That is a promise. More Krethic soldiers arrived, attempting to interfere with the evacuation. Jake's squad held them off with precise defensive fire. When a Krethic heavy weapons team tried to target the civilians, Jake personally eliminated them with a well-placed grenade. The explosion was controlled, destroying the enemy position without damaging nearby structures that might contain more civilians. The evacuation transport landed in the street, its armored hull scarred from flying through active combat zones. Marines helped the Valoran civilians board the ship, lifting the injured with surprising gentleness considering their fearsome appearance in combat armor. A young Valoran child stopped in front of Jake and looked up at him. Are you going to kill all the bad aliens? The child asked in simple words. Jake knelt down to the child's level. We are going to make sure they never hurt your people again, he said. That is what humans do. We protect those who need protection. The child considered this for a moment, then reached out and touched Jake's armored hand. Thank you, the child whispered. Jake felt something tighten in his chest. This was why he fought, not for glory or conquest, but for moments like this, to give innocent people a chance to live. Elsewhere in the city, Dr. Nathan Gray worked in a temporary field hospital that had been set up in a mostly intact building. The human combat medic moved between patients with quick efficiency, treating Valoran wounded with the same care he would give to human casualties. This one needs immediate surgery, he told his assistant, pointing to a Valoran who had been caught in a building collapse. Get him prepped. I will operate as soon as I finish with this patient. A Valoran doctor who had been hiding in the hospital watched Nathan work with amazement. You are treating our people? But we are aliens to you. Nathan looked up from his work, his hands steady as he administered medicine. You are people who are hurt, he said simply. That is all that matters. On Earth we have a saying. First, do no harm. That applies to everyone, not just humans. The Valoran doctor nodded slowly, then moved to help. Together, human and Valoran medical staff worked side by side to save lives. On the Galactic Council space station, Admiral Thex Vorin watched the human ground operations through satellite feeds. What he saw both impressed and disturbed him. The human Marines fought with a level of aggression and skill that was terrifying. They moved through combat zones that would stop most Council military forces. They accepted casualties to protect civilians, using their own bodies as shields when necessary. But what struck him most was the humanity they showed. Every time they secured an area, the first thing they did was search for civilians who needed help. They treated the wounded, provided food and water, and evacuated people to safety before moving on to the next objective. They were not conquerors. They were guardians. Ambassador Lyra Ven was embedded with one of the human marine units, documenting everything she saw. She watched as Corporal Amy Chen talked to frightened Valoran children, showing them that humans were not monsters. She saw Sergeant Jake Morrison's squad share their own rations with hungry civilians, even though it meant they would have less food for themselves. She witnessed human medics work themselves to exhaustion, treating the wounded. "Why do you do this?" she asked Jake during a brief pause in the fighting. "Your people barely know us. Why risk your lives for strangers?" Jake checked his weapon and looked at her steadily. "Because you asked for help," he said. "Because your people were dying and could not protect themselves, that is reason enough." "But the other council species fear humanity," Lyra Ven said. "They say you are dangerous, that your world made you violent." "They are right," Jake admitted. "Earth is a dangerous world. We evolved fighting for survival every day. We know violence better than most species ever will. But we also understand something that peaceful species sometimes forget. Violence is not always evil. Sometimes violence is necessary to protect the innocent from those who would harm them. The question is not whether you have the capacity for violence. The question is what you choose to do with that capacity." Lyra Ven recorded his words carefully. This was what the council needed to understand. Humans were dangerous, yes, but their danger was focused, controlled, used for protection rather than conquest. As the second day of ground fighting continued, the Krethic forces found themselves trapped and overwhelmed. Human Marines pushed them back from every civilian area they had occupied. When Krethic soldiers tried to use Valoran as hostages, human snipers took them down with precise shots that somehow did not harm the captives. When Krethic commanders threatened to execute prisoners, human special forces teams rescued them before the threats could be carried out. Supreme Commander Krax received reports from his ground commanders that filled him with despair. His troops were being systematically defeated by human soldiers who fought with a combination of advanced technology and savage effectiveness. The humans showed no mercy to those who threatened civilians, but they accepted surrender from those who laid down their weapons. Several of his units had already surrendered rather than face elimination. In orbit, the space battle was all but over. The Krethic fleet was down to less than 30% of its original strength. Human warships controlled all orbital approaches to Valora Prime. Any Krethic ship that the surrender ceremony took place in the central plaza of Ventara, the Valoran capital city. The plaza had survived the Krethic bombardment mostly intact, and now it filled with representatives from dozens of species who had come to witness this historic moment. Supreme Commander Krax stood before Admiral Kyle Hammond, his proud posture diminished by defeat. Around them, human Marines maintained security while Valoran civilians watched from the edges of the plaza. Galactic Council officials recorded everything for the historical archives. I, Supreme Commander Krax of the Krethic Dominion, formally surrender all forces under my command to the United Earth Defense Force, Krax said, his voice carrying across the plaza. We acknowledge defeat and accept all terms offered by the human military. Kyle took the formal surrender document and studied Krax carefully. The Krethic commander expected harsh treatment, perhaps even execution. That was what his own people would have done to a defeated enemy. Your forces will be allowed to depart Valora Prime immediately, Kyle said. Your wounded will be treated by our medical staff before you leave. Any Krethic personnel who committed crimes against civilians will be held for trial, but the rest of your forces will return to Krethic space unharmed. Do you understand these terms? Krax could not hide his surprise. You are letting us go. After everything we did? We are letting you go, Kyle confirmed. Because we offered those terms before the battle began, and we keep our word. However, let me be very clear. If Krethic forces ever attack peaceful species again, we will respond the same way. Human military forces will always answer when the innocent cry for help. Remember that." Krax nodded slowly. He had learned a hard lesson about humanity. They were not just dangerous warriors. They were dangerous warriors with principles. Perhaps that made them more dangerous than any species he had encountered. As the Krethic forces prepared to leave, human engineering units were already helping rebuild damaged Valoran cities. Sergeant Jake Morrison's Marine platoon worked alongside Valoran civilians to clear rubble from collapsed buildings. The same hands that had held weapons in combat now lifted heavy debris to search for survivors. "Sergeant, we found someone," Corporal Amy Chen called out. "Alive, but trapped." Jake moved quickly to the location. A Valoran was pinned under a fallen support beam, injured but conscious. Jake positioned himself carefully and lifted the beam with the assistance of his powered armor. Amy pulled the Valoran free and immediately began treating the injuries. "You are safe now," Amy told the rescued Valoran. "We are going to take care of you." The Valoran looked at her with tears streaming down their face. "You saved my life. Why? You do not know me." Amy smiled gently. "Because that is what humans do. We help people who need help." Dr. R. Nathan Gray's field hospital had become a permanent medical center treating both Valoran civilians and wounded Krethic prisoners. The Valoran medical staff who worked alongside him had learned that humans took their medical ethics very seriously. Every patient received the same quality of care, regardless of species or whether they had been friend or enemy. A young Krethic soldier, barely more than a child himself, watched Nathan work with confusion. "Why do you help us? We attacked your friends. We killed many Valoran." Nathan finished bandaging the soldier's injuries before answering. "Because you are hurt, and I am a doctor. My job is to heal people, not to judge them. What you did was wrong, but that does not mean I will let you die when I can save you. Maybe you will learn something from this. Maybe you will go home and tell your people that humans showed you mercy when they did not have to." The Krethic soldier was quiet for a long time. "I will tell them," he finally said. "I will tell them about the humans who could have killed us, but chose to help us instead." Ambassador Lyra Venn prepared her comprehensive report for the Galactic Council. She had spent days documenting human military operations, interviewing human soldiers and officers, and studying how they conducted themselves in combat. Her findings would change everything the Council thought they knew about humanity. She stood before the full Council assembly, her presentation displayed on screens throughout the chamber. "For 15 years we have feared humanity," she began. "We called them Deathworlders and kept them at a distance because we were afraid of their capacity for violence. I am here to tell you that we were wrong." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Humans are indeed dangerous," Lyra Venn continued. "They possess military capabilities that surpass most species in the galaxy. They come from a world that forced them to become excellent at survival and combat. But what we failed to understand is that humans have built their military culture around protecting the weak, not exploiting them. They fight not for conquest, but for justice. They showed more mercy to the Krethic in defeat than the Krethic would have shown to us." She displayed footage of human Marines evacuating civilians under fire, of human medics treating wounded enemies, of human soldiers sharing their food with hungry Valoran children. This is who the humans are. Yes, they are warriors, but they are warriors who fight for ideals. They answered our call for help when everyone else said it was impossible. They asked for nothing in return. They simply came because we needed them. Admiral Thex Vorin stood to address the council. "I have commanded military forces for 20 years. I have fought pirates and border conflicts, but I have never seen anything like the human military operation at Valora Prime. They executed their mission with precision and discipline. They took casualties to protect civilians. They showed us that being a warrior is not about violence. It is about having the strength to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The Council voted unanimously to issue a formal apology to humanity for 15 years of isolation and prejudice. They acknowledged that humans had proven themselves to be exactly what the galaxy needed: protectors, guardians, heroes. When the Council's delegation arrived on New Terra to deliver the apology personally, Admiral Kyle Hammond received them with courtesy but no arrogance. "We did not come to Valora Prime seeking recognition or reward," he told them. "We came because people were dying and needed help. That is reason enough." "But you have changed everything," the Council representative said. "Species across the galaxy are reconsidering their attitudes toward humanity. Some are even asking if human military forces could help train their own defense forces." Kyle considered this carefully. "We can help train other species, yes, but we will not become the galaxy's military. Every species needs to be able to defend what they believe in. What we can offer is partnership. If you face threats you cannot handle alone, call us. We will answer. But the responsibility for galactic security must be shared by everyone, not placed on one species." Back on Valora Prime, a massive celebration filled the streets of Ventara. Thousands of Valoran gathered to thank the human forces before they departed. Children ran up to human marines, offering flowers and small gifts. Valoran artists had painted murals showing humans defending their world. Valoran musicians composed songs celebrating the warriors who answered their cry for help. Captain Lisa Martinez walked through the crowds with Lieutenant Maya Foster, both of them overwhelmed by the gratitude being shown. Young Valoran approached Maya and asked to hear stories about the space battle. She found herself describing the fight not as a glorious victory, but as a necessary action to protect innocent lives. "Were you afraid?" a Valoran child asked. Maya nodded honestly. "Yes, I was afraid. War is scary, but sometimes you have to do scary things to protect people you care about." "You do not even know us," the child said. "Why did you care about us?" Maya knelt down to the child's level. "Because you needed help. That is all the reason we need. On Earth, we have learned that strength means nothing if you do not use it to help others. You might be alien to us, but you are still people, and people deserve to be protected." Sergeant Jake Morrison said goodbye to the Valoran families his unit had evacuated. They insisted on giving him and his squad handmade gifts, simple things that meant more than any military medal. An older Valoran pressed something into Jake's hand. When he opened it, he found a small pendant carved from local stone. "This is a traditional Valoran symbol," the old one explained. "It means guardian. You and your people are guardians. You protected us when we could not protect ourselves. We will never forget this." Jake felt emotions tighten his throat. "It was an honor to help you," he managed to say. As the human fleet prepared to leave Valora Prime, Ambassador Lyra Venn made one final visit to the flagship Defiance. She met with Admiral Hammond in his ready room, wanting to thank him personally before he departed. "You saved my people," she said simply. "I do not have words adequate to express our gratitude." Kyle shook his head. "We did what needed to be done. Any species with the power to help should have done the same. But they did not," Lyra Venn pointed out. "Only humanity answered our call. Why?" Kyle was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Earth taught us hard lessons. We fought wars among ourselves that killed millions. We learned what happens when the strong prey on the weak. We decided that if we survived our own violent history, we would use that experience to protect others. Not everyone agrees with that philosophy, even among humans. But enough of us believe it that it shapes how we act." "The galaxy will be different now," Lyra Venn said. "Humanity's actions here will echo across countless star systems. Other species will see that the Deathworlders are not monsters but heroes." "We are not heroes," Kyle said firmly. "We are just people who did what was right. Do not make us into something we are not. We have flaws. We make mistakes. We struggle with the violence we are capable of, but we try to use our strength responsibly. That is all we can do. The human fleet departed from Valora Prime orbit in formation, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. On the planet below, millions of Valoran watched the ships leave, many of them crying as they said goodbye to the warriors who saved their world. Throughout the galaxy, news of the battle spread quickly. Other species watched recordings of human military operations with awe and some fear. The humans had defeated a threat that seemed invincible. They had shown mercy to a defeated enemy who deserved none. They had protected an alien species as if it were their own. On distant worlds, other species began to reconsider what they thought they knew about the dangerous Deathworlders from Earth. Perhaps humanity's strength was not something to fear, but something to be grateful for. Perhaps the galaxy needed warriors who fought not for conquest, but for justice. And in the depths of space, on countless worlds where people faced threats they could not overcome alone, a new hope began to grow. If the innocent cried out for help, the Deathworlder fleet would come. Humanity would answer. They would strike back not for glory or territory, but because protecting the weak was what gave their strength meaning. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had proven that the greatest warriors are not those who conquer others, but those who protect those who cannot protect themselves. And that lesson, learned in blood and sacrifice on Valora Prime, would echo across the stars for generations to come. As Admiral Kyle Hammond stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars stream past as they jumped to hyperspace, he thought about the faces of those Valoran children. That was why humans fought when fighting was necessary, not for power, not for recognition, but to give innocent people a chance to live in peace. That was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be a guardian. And when the next call for help came, humanity would answer again, because that was who they were. That was who they chose to be. Ride to flee was allowed to leave. Any ship that continued fighting was destroyed. Admiral Kyle Hammond sent one final message to Supreme Commander Krax. You have one last chance to end this. Order all your forces to surrender immediately. We will allow your surviving ships to leave the system unharmed, and your ground troops will be returned to your territory once the situation is stable. If you refuse, we will destroy every Krethic position on this planet and eliminate your entire fleet. Choose wisely. Krax looked at his tactical displays. His fleet was shattered. His ground forces were being defeated. The humans had proven to be everything the rumors suggested and more. They were warriors beyond anything he had encountered, and most importantly, they were willing to die to protect people who were not even their own species. He had no options left. For the first time in his career, Supreme Commander Krax admitted defeat. Broadcast to all Krethic forces, he said quietly. Cease all hostilities immediately. We surrender to the humans, Ephiser said nervously. The humans are deploying ground troops. They are landing directly on top of our occupied positions. Krax felt a cold fear settle in his chest. If the humans fought on the ground the same way they fought in space, his ground forces would be slaughtered. For the first time in his military career, he began to consider the possibility of defeat. On the bridge of the Defiance, Kyle watched the deployment of the first ground forces. Captain Martinez, your Marines are clear to land. Find those Valoran civilians and get them to safety. Understood, Admiral, Lisa replied. We will bring them home. The battle for Valora Prime was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Krethic had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price for that mistake. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were living up to their reputation in ways the Krethic never imagined. All ships, battle formation, he ordered. Bring us within communication range of the Krethic fleet, and someone get me a direct line to whoever is in command of those ships. The human fleet began its approach to Valora Prime, engines burning bright in the darkness of space. On the planet below, Ambassador Lyra Venn received word that human warships had arrived in the system. She ran to the nearest observation post and looked up at the night sky. There, just visible as moving points of light against the stars, she could see them. The Deathworlder fleet, the warriors from Earth. They had come. Against all odds, when the rest of the galaxy turned away or proved too weak, the humans had answered the cry for help. Lyra Venn felt tears of hope running down her face as she watched those distant lights grow brighter. The humans were coming, and the Krethic had no idea what they had just brought upon themselves, oving into position for a final assault on the failing planetary shields. Krethic dropships were preparing to land troops on the surface. Time was running out. "Send it," he said. The signal went out across the vast distance of space, racing toward the human colony worlds at the speed of light. It carried a simple message that no human military force had ever received from the Galactic Council before. A plea for help. A desperate cry from aliens who had nowhere else to turn. Lyra Venn watched the transmission indicator confirm that the message was away. She looked at the display showing her dying homeworld and whispered a prayer to her ancestors. She did not know if the humans would even receive the signal. She did not know if they would care about the fate of an alien species they barely knew. She did not know if Deathworlders had mercy in their hearts. All she could do was wait and hope that somewhere out in the darkness of space, someone heard her people crying out for help.